A tragic black comedy, psychological drama, thriller, social satire, Bong Joon-ho's decade-closing, evidently genre-bending masterpiece, Mise-en-scène or Parasite, so pertinent, implicative, and calculated, is like a needle in the proverbial haystack. Something that's maybe just as difficult to successfully make work as it is to find. In an era of Hollywood, seemingly ever-growingly dependent on and dominated by
the amusement park films.
The creation and success of a humbler auteur-driven opus like Our Subject has significant potential to become a generational landmark. Reconciling both the coveted Palme d'Or and the Academy's Best Picture awards in their honors for the first time in over 60 years, and marking the first non-English achievement of the latter entirely,
can we get like Gone with the Wind back, please?
Parasite is unquestionably one of the best films of its time, and a worthy contender for best film of all time. Demonstrating astute and purposeful use of basic cinematic techniques to reinforce its complex and socially conscious themes, despite the film featuring almost exclusively in Korean, Bong can communicate through the artistry and visual language of cinema, exploring his insight toward the human condition masterfully, immersively, and universally. This is Parasite's universal language. Boiled down to its core themes, Parasite is Bong Joon-ho's lament for meritocracy's demise and corporatism's reign within our modern society. While not inherently a rejection of capitalism, Parasite satirizes and criticizes the greed and exploitation emergent within the system.
넌 이 좋은 실력으로 왜 미대는 맨날 떨어지냐?
나 죽을래.
A very common theme between all of his movies, Bong Joon-ho opened up in an interview with Birth Movie's Death on why he believes a class-conscious narrative garnered so much attention with Parasite specifically, despite its strongly Korean-centric culture.
왜냐하면 우리가 하나의 나라에서 살고 있다. 지금 하나의 거대한 나라, 자본주의라는 나라인 거죠. 그래서 똑같은 유니버설한 반응이 있나 봐요.
Throughout the plot, the hard-working, determined Kims are unable to find success until they give in to the life of fraud and manipulation, a lifestyle that ultimately destroys them. Meanwhile, the Parks live in excess, a life of minimal effort, profiting from others' labor. Quick to dismiss or demonize those under them, the Parks are principally demonstrated as emotional decision-makers. Bong flaunts this flaw, this gullibility, through the use of dramatic irony, often writing a confrontation to imply some sort of upcoming realization before revealing that the Parks are actually laughably clueless. Deliberately haunted by moral ambiguity, and each character having their own distinct, lovable, and detestable characteristics, it's hard to even choose who the eponymous parasites are. Is it the Kims, for exploiting the Parks' wealth? Is it the Parks, for exploiting the Kims' labor? Or is it Gyun-se for his lack of ambition, perpetuating both family struggles? Maybe it's capitalist society itself, burdening the human condition, draining our compassion as we're forced to compete one another. As the world transcendent of political borders feels the squeeze of income inequality and the rise of civil unrest, Parasite's plot is perhaps one of the larger reasons it became such a critical and commercial hit. And from a purely literary perspective, it's true that the bare story is the most important factor. However, it's Bong's presentation of this story which foundationally aids our understanding of it. From a more comprehensive perspective of film specifically, it's the cinematography of Parasite which truly makes it alluring and accessible. Cinematography is extremely essential, especially in a movie with a language barrier, denotatively and physically in the form of subtitles, disrupting the composition and eye-pathing of many shots for most audiences. To effectively allow the story to breathe a life of its own without necessitating or infringing on the viewer's reading skills, control of composition, framing, and camera position have to be nearly flawless. Luckily for Parasite, the cinematography of Parasite is so beautiful, delicate, and meticulous that each and every single shot could be analyzed at length as to what makes them so effective, what themes a certain design choice fortifies, or even what's notable about something's absence. Though a frame-by-frame analysis would be fun, a medium-length English project is not the place for it. So instead, let's take a look at some of the most important visual motifs that Bong Joon-ho uses to develop themes and communicate his characters and their dynamics. Angles. Used throughout Parasite to convey a character's relative importance, confidence, or status, angle choice can give or take a character's freedom to emote or suggest their control over a situation or lack thereof. Most notably, as Ki-yu climbs the social ladder, the camera descends, tilting upward towards him, suggesting that he is metaphorically above the audience, more composed and intelligent. Here, the camera dollies into a close-up, evoking Ki-yu's dominance as he conspires his cabal. However, from Young-gyo's perspective in the reverse shot, Ki-yu is once again small, suggesting both that he is cloaking his chicanery behind an innocent appearance, and that she continues to feel a superiority over him. Also important to this shot is the ability to quickly parse which characters are most central in any given shot, or how they relate to the setting's geometry, is crucial. Helping communicate many of the same themes as do discriminative use of angles, a character's relative size in a shot can imply their degree of power or help build empathy with the audience. Most notably, though it may be difficult to consciously notice at normal speed, many shots in Parasite's first half track inward, characters becoming larger in the frame and closer to the audience, suggesting that they are gaining control. Conversely, a shot like this suggests the opposite. When the Kims lose their sense of control and comfort, the shot opens up, making them seem tiny in comparison with the world. It's clear that the eloquence in visual language through Parasite is superb, though the camera is only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to getting a shot right. Manipulation of it is just as, maybe even less important than manipulation of one's subjects and objects. Parasite's mise-en-scène, a French word that just means put in the scene, most of the time works in tandem with its cinematography, affirming many of the same visual motifs, but instead of camera placement, it's with character placement and set design. For example, how physically close characters are to each other is often very telling of their feelings toward each other. The Kims are often blocked together almost claustrophobically, even when they eventually have more space, showing that when their situation is tight, they'll still be there for each other. In this shot specifically, Ki-jung, who's described as the most fitting into the rich lifestyle, is physically above the rest of her family, more powerful. However, it's clear that she's more insecure, learning that while money creates comfort and power, it doesn't buy happiness. Meanwhile, the Parks are almost always very distant from each other, splayed out within their mansion. Maybe more telling than that is the distance that the Kims and the Parks keep between each other. While cohabiting the mansion, it's important that a manufactured sense of discomfort, a moat between the classes, is maintained. As a commentary on class stagnation, the perpetuation of poverty must be implied somehow for us to truly appreciate and understand the character's plight. Choosing to depict this mostly visually, however with a few vocal hints, this feeling of unsentimentality between the families is subtle but clear. Don't cross the line. For most interactions between the classes, especially the adults, there exists some visual barrier to separate them, creating a sort of symmetry. Perhaps the most potent example of this is at the beginning of the second half. The Park's dominance is extremely obvious, as they are able, although unknowingly, to have a sex scene play out only a few feet away from the Kims, the latter having virtually zero control over the situation. Separated only by a coffee table, the Kims might have a physical barrier to hide behind, but their smell does not. Dong-ik revealing that he is disgusted by the Kims' special smell and its crossing of the line, a symbol of their poverty. This shot also, during a scene where Ki-yu talks of internal conflict and insecurity, shows that he feels that he's on both sides of the line at once. Jokingly called a staircase movie by the production team, Parasite uses vertical space to analog societal influence, especially, of course, with the metaphorical act of ascending or descending stairs. A very ubiquitous motif, it's one lens that the entire story could be analyzed by. Bong uses stairs to show that a character is progressing, waning, stooping down to another character's status, or... yeah. Outside of characters and sets, Bong sometimes uses props to reinforce or establish an idea, like how this rock, which symbolizes the Kim's luck and ambition, is tended to and brought along on their journey back to the house by Ki-yu, though it is used against him when he tries to donate it to Gun-se. It's the double-edged sword of wealth. More subtly, over the course of their plan, the Kims upgrade the beer that they drink to more expensive brands. Also, this bus, which Mong timed to line up with the line of dialogue where Ki-yu first discovers that he can get away with lying. This sweep separates one life from another. On the topic of how sound can have implications in a story, let's talk about... Yeah, what a great segue. Anyway, overlooking the great sound mixing foley and placement of things like that aforementioned sweep, this rock falling down the stairs despite the prop being made of foam, Ki-take's head getting smacked by a well-aimed piece of kangaroo jerky, or what's maybe the most terrifying doorbell sound in cinema, Bong's use of non-diegetic sound is where his artistic vision really takes shape, helping build a character's inner thoughts both non-verbally and non-visually. A fitting score, which Jung Jae-il did a fantastic job on composing, can heighten and okay, this is getting empty without music. A fitting score can heighten and accentuate the emotion of a sequence, adding to the communicability of the story and even the nuanced elements of a character's ambitions or motive. For example, check out these shopping scenes opposed with the wrong music. Compared to the actual theatrical product, which sounds like this.
한곡 불러주면 완전 땡큐고. 자기 그거 있잖아.
What could have been falsely diagnosed as a Yeongyo-centered sequence focused on the fast, exciting aspects of shopping is actually a more meditative piece, realizing Kim Ki-take's internal discordant thoughts of disdain, dissonant violins flooding the sonics as we empathize with the loss of his home, his self-consciousness, and his aversion to Yeongyo's privilege and lack of self-awareness. Those violins are even included in a song from a bit earlier called Ki-take's Frontal Lobe. As Bong tries to get the audience into the head of his characters as much as possible, by any means possible, his use of music and sound design are no different. Even in the simplest places, Bong exercises a very precise command over all his narrative conveying methods. For example, when first encountering the architect's stone, Bong captures Ki-yu's entrancement. Listen closely. Throwing a dreamlike Dutch angle reaction shot into the timeline in which the audio is entirely that from a different shot, the audience is made to feel just as disoriented as Ki-yu himself. Foreshadowing his blindness via ambition, he's shown as if he's lost in a pipe dream, chasing an unreachable goal. A technique called the J-cut. The secret to immersion here is the operating under an extremely economical 960 shots, a seconds per shot stat that's almost 3 times longer than the average, at least according to this. Parasite's editing, handled by Yang Jin-mo, is very succinct. Though a little sparser than usual, this restraint towards editing only accentuates its significance. Parasite's lack of editing is mostly owed to Bong Joon-ho's near megalomaniacally placed importance on storyboarding, planning out each shot's composition, set pieces, character movement, and camera movement, to the extent that the movie was actually recently re-released as a graphic novel, just a chronological compilation of the original storyboards. However, again, this moderation in no way undercuts or de-emphasizes the value of editing. It's just that, just as each shot serves some sort of purpose towards the greater objectives of the film, each cut does too. Perhaps one of the most universally admired sequences in cinema in recent memory, the act-ending peach montage is a fantastic microcosm of what makes the editing, and pretty much everything all throughout Parasite, so charming. Silky smooth, rhythmic, unbelievably information-dense yet somehow still perfect in its pacing and delivery, pulling shots from different times and places together flawlessly such that every shot and every cut feel just as necessary and appropriate as the last. This is one of those moments that you can really watch with the sound off. Juxtaposed shots enhance the meaning of each other, each piece of the puzzle building on what's already there and foreshadowing what's to come. While there's actually a cut hidden in the middle of the pan here, just to ensure the pacing is correct, Bong does these cutless edits, often referred to as in-camera edits, a lot, switching up a shot's composition without actually having to clip the film. creating a smooth, immersive feel. Here, and wherever it makes sense to, cuts and movements are somehow precedented. They are often a reaction to a character's glance, Bong giving the audience the time to ask, "What's that character looking at?" so that the answer feels more gratifying. Speaking of gratifying, there's little that Bong is a better master of, considering that a dark social commentary like Parasite can still be considered a comedy. Even here, at the end of this 5-minute montage sequence, it's revealed to have actually been building up this whole time for this payoff, a wordless, purely visual punchline. In conclusion, Bong's love for his craft transforms Parasite from a movie to a piece of art. Not only one that anybody can understand, but one that everybody can appreciate. A lovable, beautiful work of cinema on the surface, and a reflective, analytic dissertation of our society under the hood, Parasite's appeal is largely owed to its readability. As a simple, relatable narrative with plenty of visual motifs to help follow and read its complexities, accompanied by a majestic score with an even more majestic editing philosophy, Parasite is what other cinema wishes it could be, a worldwide phenomenon, a story that speaks every language.
So it's sadly universal.
How do you describe Parasite?
It's just a funny and scary movie.
No, yeah,